Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to show you the process that I use to remove regular stamps, gummed stamps, from paper. These are not self-adhesive stamps. Do not use this process on self-adhesive stamps. It will destroy the stamps. Okay. I have a separate video for self-adhesive stamps. These are, the traditional style of stamp. Okay. So from 1847 until 1989, stamps were made with gum on the back, acacia gum. Okay, uh, with one exception, the 1974 P stamp, which is a self-adhesive stamp. From 1989 until 2007, some stamps were gummed, some stamps were self-adhesive. And to the best of my knowledge, the last gummed stamp was made in 2007. Okay. So between 1989 and 2007, you've got a mixed bag. You have to figure out, is this a gum stamp or a self-adhesive stamp? All right. The gummed stamps have rough perfs. The self-adhesive stamps have very smooth perfs. That's the simplest way to tell the difference. Okay. Um, so what you need to get these stamps off of the paper is a little bowl with some room temperature water and lots of paper. We'll get to the paper in a moment. Um, I've trimmed the stamps. I've trimmed the excess paper off the stamps because we want to soak the stamps, not paper. And the fundamental reason we do this is to preserve the stamp. Okay, stamp collecting is an act of preservation, and the envelopes that we use are often very acidic. Okay, so envelope paper is cheap paper. It's very acidic, and over time will discolor the stamp. Okay, so we want to get the stamp off the paper. And the process is this part of the process anyway is quite simple. You put the stamps in the water and wait for them to come off the paper. There's a little more to it than that, but it's as easy as soaking them in water. Okay, now I've got a pie plate here. This is an old pie plate. The reason I use the pie plate is because it has a lot of texture. Okay, if you use a bowl with a very smooth surface, the stamps can stick to that surface, and you're going to have a really hard time pulling them off that surface. I should say they adhere to the surface. It's a surface tension problem. Okay, so the pie plate has lots of little wrinkles and texture, so the stamps aren't going to stick to the pie plate. Okay, room temperature water because stamps will curl in cold water quite badly, and hot water could damage some of the inking. Okay, so yeah, hot water will speed up the process, but I would avoid using the hot water. Moreover, keep in mind that this is paper. Okay, the gum stamps are made of paper, and paper is made of a bunch of fibers that are kind of held together loosely just by friction. Right? It's not really weaved like a fabric, right? They're just kind of pressed together, and paper fibers will start to separate in water. Okay, if you don't believe me, take a regular sheet of paper, put it in a bucket of water for 2 days, and then pick it up. It'll just fall apart on you. Okay, so the rule here is we want the stamps to be in water for as little time as possible. Okay, um, and stamps are going to wrinkle and curl when they're exposed to water. Okay, so my process is designed to prevent that wrinkling and curling. The wrinkling and the curling can put creases and cracks in the stamps as well, especially the more modern stamps from the 1980s, 1990s. So we've got to prevent that as well. All right. Um, I usually do about 4 batches. Okay, and I usually have between 20 and 25 stamps per batch. Okay, so I'm working in small batches, and I'll do 3 or 4 batches at a time. Okay, in this video, I'm just going to do 1 batch to keep it simple. Okay, but typically I will do 3 or 4 batches. Okay, and I'll 20 to 25 stamps a batch. All right, so in the stamps go. Get them separated. I'm going to pat them down into the water, like so, and then we're going to wait. Now, older stamps are just going to lift right off the paper. Okay, and so you'll know when they're ready because they're just going to lift off the paper. Some of the newer stamps you'll have to encourage to come off the paper, and I'll show you that in a moment. And there are a few stamps that are going to curl really badly. They just want to roll up into a tight little cylinder. And I've got a few examples in here. The Celebrate the Century stamps are the worst culprits. The Celebrate the Century stamps love to curl up. And again, once they curl, they wrinkle, they crease, they crack, they're done. They're no good at that point. Okay. Oh, here we go. All right. So I'm going to look around and there we go. You can see this stamp here has just lifted off its paper. Okay. So I'm going to pull that stamp out carefully, like so. Okay. I'll get rid of the paper as well. We don't need that. And the next step, there's one of two things you can do. You can rinse the stamp, right? We've got the stamp off paper. We've gotten the stamp off the paper, but we've got to get rid of the excess gum. So I like to just give it a little rinse. I'm not rubbing very hard here. I'm just giving it a little rinse and a little rub to get rid of the gum. Depends on the stamp. Like I'm not feeling a lot of gum on this stamp, so I'm not gonna do too much rubbing or rinsing. The other thing you can do is just soak it again in a big pool of water. Okay, you can wash it essentially in that big pool of water. And then when I feel I've got the gum off, I'm going to put it onto a piece of paper like so. Okay. And then we simply repeat. Now I like to, oh, here's one. This one's starting to curl. Okay, so we got to get this one out of here. So you notice this one, that one's starting to curl up. So I'm going to do everything I can to prevent that from curling. Give it a little rinse. And typically with the curly stamps, I'm going to lay them face down, like so. That'll keep them from curling, or against the curl, if you will. All right. Get the extra paper out of there, and we keep going. Now, I like to use stamps from. I like to soak stamps from different eras because they're going to come off at different times, right? So different manufacturers will have different thicknesses of gums, maybe different formulations of gum, and they'll come off at different times, right? So if all the stamps come off at once, then you're kind of scurrying to get all the stamps out of here. Right, there we go. All right. And I'm going to work this way along the paper. If I start at the top, I'm going to drip water on the paper. I don't want to do that. The paper should be dry when the stamp goes onto it. Okay. So this can take several minutes. Okay, it's going to take several minutes. So at this point, I'm going to pause the video and continue getting these stamps off the paper. And then when I'm done, I'll show you the rest of the process. Okay, I'm not quite done, but I wanted to show you one thing. This stamp here it's not coming off the paper all on its own. So what you can do is give it a little encouragement, right? So you can start to peel the stamp off the paper. Well, really, I'm peeling the paper off the stamp. Okay, so this is important. You want to keep the stamp as flat as possible. Okay, so I'm supporting the stamp with my fingers, like so, and gently pulling the paper, off. Now, if you get a little resistance, stop. Okay, you can always put the stamp back in the water, right? But if you get some resistance, that means the gum is still stuck to the paper and you risk tearing the stamp or pulling some paper fibers off the back of the stamp. So go lightly there. Okay, I can feel a little gum, so I'll rinse that excess gum off. Again, you can give it a little bath if you want. And then this one likes to curl, so I'll place that one face down. Okay. So again, if a stamp is if the stamp's not coming off the paper on its own, if it's not lifting off the paper all on its own, you can start to peel the paper off the stamp. Okay, you're going to have to in some cases. There are many stamps that just aren't going to lift on their own, no matter how long they sit in the water. So you will have to encourage them. but go lightly so that you don't tear the stamp. All right, I'll resume the recording once I've got all these stamps out of the water. Okay, at this point, I've gotten all the stamps off their paper. Okay. And what I do at this point is I cover the stamp with another piece of paper. So I'm going to lay down a sheet of paper on top, and I'm going to just gently iron that out. Okay. Really, what I'm doing is I'm getting contact between the stamps and this top sheet of paper. There's a couple of reasons for this. One, the paper will soak up water. We want to get the water out of the stamps. Two, I'm going to go on and normally I would go on and soak more stamps. Okay. And you don't want to just leave the stamps there because as they dry out, they'll actually start to curl. They'll start to pop up. So this keeps them flat as well. So it has two purposes. This extra sheet of paper will take some water out and keep the stamps relatively flat until we get to the pressing stage. So the pressing stage is next. Okay, and I had a few too many stamps. I was hoping to have just enough stamps to fill one sheet. I went a little bit over, so I'll just show you this again. You lay a sheet of paper down on top and gently iron that out. The stamps will be fine. So normally at this stage, I would change out the water. You might have noticed the water got very yellow from all the gum and other things. So normally I would just change out the water and start my next batch. I forgot to mention the big bin here full of water. You can use that to wash the excess gum off the stamps once the stamps have come off the paper. That's fine. I prefer to rinse the stamps under running water. So I want to rinse the gum off. But even when I rinse the gum off, I have a pan here. Why? I've lost a few stamps down the drain. Okay, so if the stamp falls off my finger, it ends up in the bin, in the water, and I can recover it. But sadly, I have lost a few stamps down the drain in the early days of developing this process. Okay. And just one more thing to reiterate. You will see me kind of gently rubbing the back of the stamp to get the gum off. Be very careful with that. It takes some experience because you can roughen the back. You can actually damage the paper fibers on the back of the stamp. And that's, you want the stamp to be nice and smooth on the back. Okay, so that will take some experience. All right. Okay, so on to the pressing stage. I've got to move to another table and set up for the pressing stage, so I'll be back in a moment.